Akeeshea Daniels is a lifelong East Chicago resident who, until recently, lived in West Calumet Housing Complex. She now lives in Zone 3 of the Superfund site. Akeeshea, thanks so much for talking to me.
Thank you.
So you lived in West Calumet Housing Complex for 12, I guess almost 13 years by the end. 13 and a half years. So how did you feel about this time last year when you first got that letter that said the mayor wanted to tear the place down because the contamination was so severe?
I was devastated because it was just like we were blindsided. We didn't know anything about this lead. And I felt like getting this letter telling me I had to move, and I'm like, move where? You know, East Chicago, I was born and raised here, 28 years in Zone 2. I've never been outside of East Chicago. I've never lived outside of East Chicago. Where are me and my kids going?
So tell me a little bit about how hard that process was of finding somewhere to go.
The process was very tedious. The biggest thing was trying to find somewhere that I could fit my family into. You know, there was a lot of people looking for 3 bedrooms because they don't have 5 bedrooms anymore. Didn't want to move too far out of the area because my grandmother, my mom, my family is here. So, you know, regardless of it being contaminated with lead, I was like, well, I'm already contaminated. So.
What kind of help did they give you to make the move? I mean, what did you have that was helpful, and what kind of did you need that you weren't getting?
Well, they gave us some people that were supposed to help us, relocation specialists. They helped out a lot. But I ended up finding my place on my own. So I think I was looking for a place roughly about 3-4 months before I actually found somewhere to move.
Did that make it hard to find somewhere in the neighborhood or somewhere that you wanted to go?
The biggest issue was trying to find somewhere that wasn't contaminated with the lead. You know, the outside was good here, but, you know, it was somewhere that I found on my own. But I know a couple of friends that moved or was trying to get a house a couple of streets over on the same block. A couple of houses over on the same block, and the houses were too contaminated for them to even move in. So it's like it was a little rough trying to find somewhere to go and not wanting to be too far away from home.
So after all that, you ended up using your voucher within the Superfund, and there is still a contamination concern here. Yes. Why was this the place that you felt safest settling?
I'm not going to say I felt the safest settling, but it was home. You know, it's not too far from where I grew up. It's not too far from my granny in case she needs me. You know, so I was kind of, and then I didn't want my son that's 13 to change schools. We have ADHD, and he's been with the same teachers since 1st grade. He's been in the same building with the same special ed teachers that help him out, and I thought moving him away, that was my biggest concern, was not moving him out of his comfort zone, because I think starting all over again would be it could be a bad process for him. Yeah. That was a big thing that kept me here in East Chicago.
And they had offered you to move to Chicago, right?
I wasn't going there, and I wasn't going there with 2 male children, 19 and 13. I just didn't think it was a good idea to move them to Chicago because of what I see every day.
What kind of concerns do you still have about contamination, about being in the Superfund?
That's my biggest concern. What am I doing to my children? You know, and then just moving somewhere else, you know, I'm worried about would we be labeled or, you know, I feel safe as far as my physical, but mental, I'm still a little shooken about where I came from. You know, I don't know if I'm still being contaminated. My house hasn't been tested in the inside. The outside was tested, but I felt like the inside should have been tested. You know, but I guess because I don't have a child under the age of 5, we're not at a risk. I think the damage is already done.
We're sitting on couches that you had in your old place, and you told me you got those cleaned yourself on your own dime.
Yes, I had to pay for them myself. They told me that because they hadn't tested my furniture beforehand, that maybe the solutions or whatever they used to clean the couches would have damaged or, you know, made the readings or whatever different. That's about the only thing that followed me. We threw away a lot. You know, we had to start all over with beds. Everything had to be, you know, started over.
So you have sort of been a community leader and trying to do some of the communication that isn't being done, right?
I tried. Even though I got a lot of backlash for what I do, but I'm not doing it just for me. If I was out just for Akeeshea, Akeeshea would be ahead by now. But Akeeshea put herself on hold to make sure everybody was okay. Once everybody got out, now it's time to start looking out for Akeeshea and her children. But I still want, you know, people to know that we still need water. You know, they're not, I think we've ran out of water. We don't have any companies that are, you know, bringing in water like they were at first. We're not getting a lot of news. You know, it's just like, oh, this story has just died out. You know, it needs to still be out there because we're still suffering. And everybody is going on. Everybody's going back home to their clean homes. You know, we're not getting that many visits from, you know, our political officials. You know, it was just like, okay, it's state of emergency. But what happened? You labeled it a state of emergency and then you all disappeared. And we're still battling. I have a son, you know, ADHD, asthma, allergies. None of that's going to change. He's labeled for the rest of his life, you know, and for no one to send anyone in to see what's going on with our children or how long this process has been going on. I recently received some paperwork saying that back in 2007, he tested at a 9 with lead. 2007, he was only 3 years old. So it's like, what happened to those children? You're talking about you only worried about children that are 5 and under now, but what about when he was 5? What damage had been done before he reached 5? I went into that complex with a healthy child. I moved into that complex with a healthy child. There was nothing wrong with him. I didn't know. I didn't know I lived on top of a lead refinery. That wasn't disclosed to me. And I feel like because it wasn't disclosed to me, it's somebody's fault. Because it's strange, all of them knew.
So you're talking a little bit about redevelopment in the city. You know, there's been a lot of talk about what the economic impact is going to be of tearing the place down. How do we rebuild the housing stock from what it's suffered in this whole crisis, property values, things like that. What would you like to see happen to, I mean, you said West Calumet, it's fenced in, it's all buttoned up. I mean, what do you want to see happen to that complex next?
I don't know. Because I just feel it's so contaminated. If my grandmother's land isn't contaminated right there, by the time you get done, it will be.
Because it's the city and HUD that are looking at the demolition, and then the EPA would be responsible for the cleanup afterward.
Yes, kind of found out by mistake. I was listening in on a conversation at the last meeting we were at. One of the ladies that said she was a liaison or something for the housing authority, that the letter had been put in June. We didn't get those letters to almost August from the mayor. So they had already put in a letter to HUD to start the demolition. So it's like, oh, wow. You already knew what you were going to do. And if you probably would have came at us and just gave us somewhere to go, it wouldn't have been this bad. Maybe everybody in West Calumet wouldn't have been so upset. You should have made sure there was an open stock of homes for people to relocate to. If you wanted us to stay in East Chicago, you should have made sure that there were homes for us to move into, instead of just sending out 300 and some letters at one time.
What do you think is going to happen to the city kind of as you knew it as a result of this? I mean, if all of the cleanup transpires, what effect is that going to have had on East Chicago's economy and the community?
I think in the back of everyone's mind, it'll always have a negative effect, because if you stand in a meeting and tell me it'll never be 100% clean or free of lead, there's no use to building anything out there. You can leave it just like you did for Union Tank. Just, you see the trees growing out of the concrete, just let it.
In that vacant lot out there,
Yeah, right across the canal.
Do you think that could be West Calumet someday?
Oh, I don't know what they're going to do with that ground, with those grounds. I just wouldn't recommend you building nothing for people to go live on.
It sounds like despite everything and with how relatively small this city is for the region, that you still feel kind of forgotten on this side of it.
Yes, because he's rebuilt every park in this area has been upgraded. You know, I've been in a complex for 13 and a half years. I think we got a new basketball court. The pool is still in the original. My mother swam in that pool. That's how old that pool is. It's never been updated. Maybe put a new fence around the outside, but never updated.
I'm curious about the community backlash. I mean, I know you've had some clashes with the city over being outspoken, that you feel like there's been tension with public officials, but why do you think that other residents are not taking kindly to the way you've spoken out about what's happening in Calumet?
Nobody is realizing what is going on. They're not understanding what's going to happen. I went to the doctor the other day. I've lost another 10% of my bone mass. I'm at 50% now, pushing 60. I'm tired of doing all these tests. I'm tired. I want to be a healthy 40-year-old and enjoying life. And I can't enjoy my life because of what I'm going through. I've had pneumonia this is the second time having pneumonia within a year's time. How much more can my body take? And I'm going to speak about it. And I'm going to tell people about what's going on with me. I'm going to tell people about what's going on with me and my children until I can't talk anymore. But living here, it may be killing me, but where do we have to go? But I feel like everybody should stay here and fight. Even if you can't live here, just come back and fight and show us some support on what's going on. That's the biggest thing. We've lost a lot of support because people have moved all over the world. And they let people move out of those homes with the furniture and the clothes and the sick children. And I just feel like, they all dropped the ball. Housing, HUD, the city, everybody that's ever known has dropped the ball. But they chose to remain in silent and watch people die just months after month, year after year, and nobody said anything. So I'm going to keep fighting. That's all I can say. I'm going to fight for me and mine. And that's about it. I'm going to fight.
So a year ago, where did you think you would be now? And then where do you think you'll be a year from now?
I don't know. It's unknown. Because I'm having so many battles with my health that I don't know. So in a year, hopefully, hopefully in a year, me and my children are out of here. If I can find somewhere to go.